this behemoth. It barely fits in my garage. All right, here's what's going on today. Today we have a 2014 Suburban with a pretty common problem. I'm sure you've experienced this at some point in your lifetime. When the owner goes to fill up the tank with gas, the gas pump shuts off. For this guy, he says every 5 seconds, not even 5 seconds, and you have to keep on resetting the pump and adding a little bit at a time. He's not even able to get just a few cents worth of gas in at a time, and it takes a really long time for it to fill up. Backing the pump nozzle out of the filler neck as much as possible doesn't really seem to even make a difference. And he's just been dealing with this for months, he says, and he's ready to finally get it taken care of. So what we are going to do is diagnose it. Now, before we diagnose it, we have to get kind of an idea of what's going on here. And that is, there is almost guaranteed some kind of blockage in the EVAP system. We have a video, Diagnosis and Understanding EVAP Systems, which actually uses a GM system, which this has, as the model, so that we can understand exactly how the system works. So I'm going to assume that you have watched that video and that you're familiar with the EVAP systems, because mostly I just want to get to the diagnosis because we're going to do this a special way. I had promised my friends over at Autoline Pro that I would use their diagnostic smoke machine, which of course you guys are well familiar with by now, in an EVAP application. And of course it was assumed this is going to be an EVAP leak application. That's typically what you would use the smoke machine for. But I don't see a whole lot of EVAP issues, and I didn't want to let this one go. While we are assuming a blockage, the other thing is that the whole idea with this channel as a do-it-yourselfer, you want to be creative with the limited tools you have and everything. At the very low price of this machine, everybody can afford one, and we can actually use this. Even if you don't have an air compressor, that's okay. The air compressor is built in. We are going to, at the very minimum, want some compressed air applications in diagnosing this at a very, very low PSI, and this does have a 1 PSI output. So even without the smoke, this would be pretty useful if you didn't have compressed air or anything. The other thing is that you again would think that you would use a smoke machine for leak detection. We are going to actually use it for blockage detection. At least I think this will work. It's just an idea I had since I did promise them we would do EVAP. This is going to be an EVAP situation. I think we can use this to find where the blockage is. And the whole point of being creative is not to think outside of the box. It's to realize there is no box. So instead of thinking of this thing as a leak detector and thinking of all the creative ways that you could do that, this is basically a compressed air smoke machine. And when you think of it that way, it's limitless, the applications that you can do. And we're going to use this as our only really technical tool, I believe, for this diagnosis. So, you know what? Now that I look and I see that we do have the Dry Erase Board of Knowledge and my YouTube Silver Award in the shot, let's just go ahead and really, this is going to be amazingly quick. Let's go over the EVAP system as far as the components for this particular issue so that you guys don't have to go back and rewatch that video, although you really should. All right, let's go ahead and look at the Dry Erase Board of Knowledge. All right, we're just going to go over this not nearly in the detail. Again, we're not really worried about diagnosing the small and large leak codes, things like that here. We have a good idea of what the problem is. We just don't know where it is. And there's going to be some kind of a blockage in this system. So you've got your fuel tank here. All right, and we've got our level of fuel here in our tank. And of course, in this area here, we've got these fuel vapors. And here's the issue. We've got our filler neck over here. All right, so that's where the nozzle from the gas pump will go in. You pump the gas in there, and of course you increase the level of fuel in the tank. Well, then you compress these vapors. These vapors have to get out somewhere. If these vapors don't get out somewhere, well then obviously the vapors are going to go out the filler neck. And when that pushes against that pressure there, when it pushes against the nozzle from the gas pump, there's a shutoff mechanism that it automatically shuts off, and that's how it knows to not overfill your tank. So these vapors here need the other way to vent out, and of course that's through the evap system. So I'm going to just really grossly oversimplify this just for this application. In order to prevent this from happening, and also in order to be able to use these vapors in the combustion chamber in the engine, so you kind of recycle them instead of letting them go in the atmosphere, we're going to have a vent off here, and this vent is going to go to an evap canister. All right, so now these fumes have a place to go off the evap canister. Now off the evap canister, we're going to have a couple of ports off of here. One of these ports, these fumes can go off to the engine. And there's going to be a solenoid here called the purge solenoid, and we talk about that in the other video. Our issue is not going to be here with the purge solenoid and going to the engine. That's not going to be our issue. Now, what is useful there is there will be, next to that purge solenoid somewhere, a little evap port that we can access where we can use our smoke machine to fill the system with smoke. But to be honest with you, again, we're not interested in this area. Our issue is going to be more back from that. So we're really not interested from this point forward. The other opening is going to go back here, and let me move our filler neck out of the way. All right, we have a very funny shaped filler neck. That's going to go out here, and that's going to also go to a solenoid. Let's draw a solenoid in there. This is going to be the vent solenoid. Now the vent solenoid is almost always open. The only reason the vent solenoid would be closed is when the system is doing an evap leak check, and we talk about that in the video. The fact that we've had months go by, according to the owner, that he's been dealing with this is actually fairly indicative. We probably don't have a vent solenoid issue. One of the things we could easily see could cause this problem would be we've, of course, got our fuel vapors in this can. They would go this way, but this solenoid is normally closed until the engine draws the vapors from vacuum, and also it will do that as part of the diagnostic test to look for leaks, but this is normally going to be closed. This is normally going to be open. Because after the evap canister, we really don't technically have fuel vapors because the evap canister charcoal absorbs the fuel vapors from the air. And yes, I said adsorbs, so don't correct me. Back off, man, I'm a scientist. There's a difference. But what's going to come out after the evap canister, if it's functioning, is going to be basically air without the hydrocarbons, without fuel. And that, of course, is going to pass through the vent solenoid, and that's going to go out to the atmosphere. This is normally open again, so we go and that passes out to the atmosphere. And now we see how the filler neck issue is resolved if the system is working. As we're adding fuel into the filler neck, then, of course, we raise our level of gas. The vapors go this way, and then they go out the vent because the vent is always open, and that relieves the pressure. If one of the things you're thinking would be a possibility, if the vent solenoid is shut closed, if the electronic solenoid has shut closed, obviously we would back up our pressure here, and of course the vapors would then want to go out the filler neck, causing the problem. So a stuck closed vent solenoid is definitely a variable. The only issue with that is because of the way the system works, the system is going to do the diagnostic tests, and as we described, operation of a vent solenoid is going to be one aspect of that test. So while we may have a blockage or something otherwise, it's most likely actually going to be in the evap canister. If that vent solenoid were stuck closed, well, of course, we would maintain vacuum in the system, which is what the decay test for the diagnostic would look for. But then it's also going to open that solenoid, and it will look for a loss of that decay. Even if we have a little bit past the vent solenoid because we're blocked in the evap canister, even a little bit of a passage through that solenoid, it's going to pass that test. So the only way that it really wouldn't is if the vent solenoid would not open at all. And in that case, the PCM would recognize that at some point, and it would put a code for an inoperative vent solenoid. So the fact that this has been happening for months, I really don't think we're going to see a vent solenoid problem. What you are most likely to see is actually a bad evap canister. That's very often what it is. You can also, of course, have any number of issues with debris or stuff like that. Some off-road vehicles, I've seen it, where this vent to the outside has been filled with rocks and dirt and gravel and things like that. And so that blocks off the vent solenoid, whether it's open or closed. So that could be a possibility there. And then I was also, a while ago, I remember watching a video from a very, very popular YouTube where in 3.5 minutes, he diagnosed that one of the issues, well, he didn't diagnose it, he guessed that one of the issues would be that spiders got into this vent tube and the spiders were blocking the vent tube so that you would have this problem. So, I don't think we're gonna find spiders in there, but I guess it doesn't hurt to check. God. All right. What we're gonna do is, how are we going to use the smoke machine in this application when normally we would, of course, think about a leak? So what we're gonna do is we can use the smoke machine, and what we're gonna do is I'm gonna use the filler neck here, and we're gonna put smoke. Let's make the smoke pink, I guess. We're going to fill this whole system with smoke. All right? And some of it's going to go here, but we're going to do all this with the engine off. We're never going to use that solenoid. That solenoid clearly is closed, otherwise we also wouldn't have that problem. It would vent through the intake. But what we are going to have is our evap system is going to fill with smoke. Canister fills with smoke, and this vent tube is going to fill with smoke. This means if we do not see smoke coming out of the vent, which I'm pretty sure we won't, then we know the smoke has been blocked somewhere. And by making various disconnections, we wouldn't even worry about this. I'm not even bothered with this. But if we disconnect, for example, from the fuel tank to the evap can, and we don't see a flow of smoke, we know we have some kind of obstruction either in the filler neck or in the valve that would be here. And there's an overflow valve that could possibly be stuck there. If we disconnect here and we see a healthy flow of smoke, we know that the problem is from the evap canister back. So then what we can do is maybe disconnect here. If we see a really healthy flow of smoke, well then obviously the vent solenoid is closed or we have a blockage with spiders. If we don't see any smoke pouring out of the evap canister when disconnecting this, pretty much a no-brainer, the evap canister has a clog. If, on the other hand, when disconnecting here, we see a healthy flow of smoke, obviously vent solenoid comes into question a lot more, and then we can electronically activate the solenoid, see if we can get it to operate, and see if we make a difference with it in the open or closed position electrically. After that, we, of course, would have something with the vent tube after the solenoid. All right, so that's how we're going to use the smoke machine. That's the plan, and let's go ahead and get the smoke machine warmed up. And in our thinking out of the box application, we need to have a way to connect it to the gas tank. For this particular application, it's not so huge a deal that we get an absolute airtight seal, but you do want to have generally an airtight seal with your smoke machine, because if you're looking for leaks with the smoke machine, you may be looking for very small pinhole leaks. You can't have a large leak from where your smoke machine is putting smoke into the system, because otherwise you're never going to find your small leak. We're not looking for a leak, we're looking for a blockage, so it's a little bit different. One final note, again, with blowing out to clear out spiders, one of the things you want to be careful, you really don't want to use a high volume here. You've got your fuel tank pressure sensor, you've got pressure sensors through the evap system. These really are not designed to go at a really high pressure. So the idea of blowing compressed air into the system to kind of flush it out, really not a good idea. The Autoline Pro smoke machine has 1 PSI output. That's going to be perfectly safe for our application. All right, let's go ahead and get to work and see if we can figure out where this blockage is. All right, I am dreading this because there's going to be a lot of undercar shots. The first thing I'm going to do actually off camera is I'm going to use some compressed air to blow out everything under the vehicle around this area. Also on this car, there's a spare tire under the vehicle. I will have to remove that. So I'm going to get everything all nice and clean and ready so I have good shots of the evap system and also don't get a whole bunch of dirt in my eyes. All right, let's turn on our smoke machine with the built-in pump. And I find this thing really heats up pretty quick. Oh, there's already smoke here, look. All right, we are ready to go. All right, so we're going to go in through the gas filler neck. And there's a couple things about this. One of them, there is, as you know, a little flap often in there, and that flap, to be honest with you, won't really be too much of a factor here if we get good airtight seal on there. But there's a couple of things. One of them is you can get that accessory kit with your Pro Bundle, and you can get this. This is kind of a universal filler cap kit where you've got this sort of sealing filler cap with a adhesive seal that you will fit right over there. Also, in the case of the flap, we have this little flap bypass tool included as well. So that's pretty cool. I actually have another method that I'm going to use since I've been doing this long before I got the Autoline Pro kit. I just made this. I've got a few of these for different models of cars. And this is an old fuel cap that I've got here that I just put on a little hose and sealed it up there. So I've got a nice airtight seal. This lets me just use this instead of the filler cap and get a nice good tight seal on there like that. And that will connect up to the smoke machine. Just connect the smoke machine right up to there. And we'll give this system a few minutes to pressurize. While we're doing that, let's grudgingly go under the vehicle and start identifying the components. All right, so what we're looking here is this is the gas filler neck. We've got an evap vent tube right here. And if we look up in there, right, let's see, there's kind of a honeycomb looking thing. See if I can point it out with the light. Right there. And that's the vent. So this is long after the solenoid. I would expect to see some smoke coming out of there even now, and I do not see any smoke. All right, so we follow that vent tube back here, and we have what is obviously our vent solenoid. Now, this is a little more complicated in that this vent solenoid has sort of permanent tube fixtures on it for the in and out, so those get replaced all as a unit, obviously. While I'm here, one thing I would like to do is let's see if we can unplug this solenoid here. And I just want to put some voltage to it and see if we can activate it. Wow, it's like totally rusty. All right, hang on a second. Let me get this connector off. All right, well, as you can see, all this rust here and everything. Unfortunately, this connector, I am afraid I am going to break the connector if I really try to remove this. I've been trying for some time with pliers and everything, kind of chewed up the little red insert tab, which won't come out. But the other thing is, like I mentioned, I'm not really suspecting the vent solenoid is going to be our problem. I do believe that our issue is going to be before it. What's this? There's something blocking it. Ah, it's a spider! Get out of there! All right, so what we're going to do for this situation is I'm pretty sure that these vents are ground side switched. I'm actually very certain of that. So what we're going to do, let me just verify that. What I'm going to do is go into what looks like the power wire. I've got my DVOM here. All right, and let's check this out. I believe we should have power at all times. And if I remove the ground, oh man, where's a good ground here? Not a really good ground here. Let's try. Okay, there we go. We put a ground there, and we can see we've got power. Okay, so what we're going to do then is, let's take our power lead here, going to move it over to the ground, and what we're going to do is give this a ground, and that'll operate the solenoid, right? And listen. All right, very good. So we've got our solenoid operated there. By the way, just one note. I would be doing this totally differently, probably using power probe and everything where I can control with a more remote switch circuit. If I was smelling fumes right now, if we had a leak and I was smelling gas fumes, you gotta, again, always be thinking here, this would not be the way to do this. I would be using a safer switched circuitry to do this. Okay, so we don't know for sure that that means that the solenoid is opening to allow the venting, but at least we do have indication that the solenoid is working. Okay, so what we want to do is this whole time our pump has been going, so I want to grab our flashlight and I'm going to look back over here. I hope the camera can pick that up, but that is not very much as long as this has been running. We definitely have a blockage. All right, now the only issue is we don't know for sure that the blockage is at the solenoid. So what we're going to do is we're going to trace our solenoid input back, and we can see it goes to what is obviously the charcoal canister right there with our connections in it. And it looks like the connection back here, this connection back here is to the vent solenoid. So we are going to disconnect that one. All right, guys, I apologize for the camera work here. This is probably going to suck. But I just cannot get an angle on this. There's a good one there. But I have to hold the camera. Wow, there's like almost no smoke coming out of there. You won't be able to see it on the camera. I can see a little bit. This is the output from the charcoal canister here. We should have smoke billowing out of there, and we do not. So I believe this is going to be a bad charcoal canister. I'm going to bring this connector down where I can access it a little easier. So what we're going to do, just to verify also that that vent solenoid is clear and that whole path is clear, I'm going to relocate my smoke machine nozzle over to this, and we should see smoke come out of that vent pretty healthy if we have no obstructions after the evap canister. Yeah, this is more what it should be looking like all under this vehicle, but I'm going to stuff that in here like that, and then let's go over to the vent. All right, and immediately you can see we've got smoke pouring out of the vent. Obviously, this is not a vent solenoid issue. Obviously, this is not a vent tube issue. We don't have spiders in there. So let's go back to the evap canister. All right, guys, once again, sorry for the camera work here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the evap canister. We got some smoke from the tank coming out there, I've noticed. That's a good sign that we don't have tank blockage. I really don't want to lower this tank. And that's just residual. I still have my smoke machine nozzle over here with me. And what we're going to do is we're going to feed that smoke machine nozzle in here and see if smoke comes out the other side. Boy, and it does not. Yeah, and when I pull it out, you see all this, the back pressure from the smoke, and none's coming out the other side here. So that's a diagnosis. We're done. This evap canister is clogged. We need to replace it. God, hate those undercar shots. All right, guys, for real. If you're watching this channel, then you're not just the do-it-yourself hack that's going to use compressed air to blow spider webs out of a system. You're going to do real diagnostics, so you need real tools. Only $150. This is a real tool. We've seen it over the last several videos. This pump has run continuously. My whole thing with filming and setup, everything for this diagnosis was about 1 hour and 15 minutes. This thing has run continuously through that time without hitch. I've used it plenty of times, almost a couple of dozen times now. Only $150. You got the built-in air compressor. You've got tools that are more than that only have one function. As we saw, by not just thinking outside of the box, but recognizing there is no box, if you can come up with creativity on applying this tool, then nothing's there to stop you other than the limit of your imagination. Super versatile, as we saw. All right, as for the final fix, the only issue is I've got to get a evap canister into this thing, and we will put one in, but the thing is then we have to fill the tank with gas to verify that we no longer have the shutoff and everything. And I'm going to leave it to the customer to do that, so I will put an addendum on here confirming that we have the fix. If this didn't fix it, well, then you won't be watching this video, but we would put an addendum or a part 2 on it when we look to see what else. But using the smoke machine, there's just no question about it. You can clearly see there are no obstructions except for that evap canister. It's conclusive. So thanks for watching. Hope you found this helpful. Special thank you to my friends over at Autoline Pro. Thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this project. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.